I think we are live, my friend.
Yeah, it's always better to be alive than the alternative. Is it 6 o'clock?
It is 6 p.m. in Seattle. Yes.
Okay. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. It's Tuesday. It's almost Friday. Life is good.
And last Tuesday, we had a lovely conversation with Jim Baylock.
That's right. James Baylog. We had him on our Earth is Our Witness, the next season, the first one. He talked about the human element. It was really, really good. He sent us a nice note afterwards saying he felt fulfilled the conversation, which is a good sign.
Yeah. And what's next on
So next one, yes, as we wait for everyone, next one, mark this date down. We haven't started promoting yet, but I will soon this weekend, is another really interesting photographer. His name is Reza. He's a Nat Geo photographer of many, many years. He's been in 25 plus covers of Nat Geo and does many other things. He is a what I would call war and peace photographer. Just epic work. And he's going to talk about a topic that's very close to his heart and actually even our hearts, which is the soul of Afghanistan's resistance against the Taliban. And that's going to be big. He's known for that and he's really inspired. He wants to talk about that. And he's actually met some of these resistance fighters. And that's going to be, mark your dates, Sunday morning, November 14th, Pacific time, 9 a.m. Pacific time, Sunday, November 14th. And he's going to be joining us from Azerbaijan, which is his Sunday night, 9 p.m.
Okay.
So Sunday morning, November 14th, that's going to be really, really good one. I'm looking forward to that one.
As will I.
Yes, absolutely.
So I just finished up a workshop over in the Olympics and we dodged the bullet because, there was that what they call a bomb cyclone that came in. And that was the first time in my life that I've been asked to leave the beach. And it was at the very end of our second day and we were ready to leave anyways, but that was the first time I've seen rangers herding people off the beach and out of harm's way because hours later, huge waves came in and flooded the parking lot that we were parked in. So that was a little bit of drama. And when we shot video, not only of that weekend, but the previous weekend up at Mount Rainier. And I think that the video that we shot will comprise our offering for the very next one of Art Wolfe Live that I think will occur in the last Tuesday in November.
Nice.
Yeah. And for tonight.
So you have been busy. You've been busy for the whole last year?
Oh, yeah. How many Tequila Tuesdays did we? I think I drained about 15 bottles of tequila.
Well, we did about, I'd say one a week, practically 1 a week tequila time and 1 a week almost Earth is Our Witness. So that's about easily 40, 45 plus in the whole year.
And this year we made up for lost time and have been doing back-to-back workshops, not only in the last couple of weeks, but throughout the summer. So we've caught up with all the ones we postponed into this year, as well as pulled off the ones that we had scheduled for this year. So it's been hectic to say the least. Now things will start to slow down a little bit and we'll prepare for next year. But I've got a garden that's being inundated with rain and wind and leaves right now. So I got my hands full.
Great. So what do we have today, Art? What do you have planned for us?
Well, I'm going to have a video on the Mandari. As people may have heard last Art Wolfe Live, I went to the South Sudan. You'll see what I shot both from a video point of view, but I also follow up with a few photos that were my favorite in that shoot. But prior to that, there was an article in the New York Times, I believe, that came out today. And it was kind of talking about an article that actually came out in the Journal of Science. And it was specifically addressing the fact that elephants, and I've seen this and you will see this because I've got a few photos, elephants in Mozambique after years of war and subsequent poaching are now going tuskless, the females that is. And so it makes sense that if females that generally had tusks were being butchered, that males were breeding with elephants that had the gene for no tusk, and they were arguably a very small part of the population. But now, since many of the females with tusks were eliminated, the males are breeding with those females without tusks, and they are evolving into tuskless elephants. Now, that would sound at base level a great strategy in nature, and yet that same gene in females that don't have tusks, also that gene is killing unborn male elephants. So yeah, there's no silver lining here. This is kind of a interesting story, and it's also highlights how negative poaching is across the board. But let me show you a few photos. I'm gonna do screen share here and see if I can get going on this. Just watch this. Oh, I did the wrong thing. That's why I have my trusted Kyle really close.
While you do that, let me just say hi to people on Facebook. Hello, Rick. Hello, Brian Wells. Hello, Sandra Grace. Hello, Gretchen. Linda, Shivang Mehta is joining from India.
Oh, nice.
A lot of our friends. Yes. Hello, everyone.
So,
oh, wow.
Here's what we're talking about. You know, this, as I started traveling to Africa in the early 80s, yeah, elephants were part of what I was after. And eventually a book last year came out called Wild Elephants. And so, of course, as a photographer, you're looking for the big tusks and the drama and the perspective, the point of view. I'm laying on my belly in this particular case. And in this, I don't recommend this point of view. But at that point, I was photographing these big male elephants that were coming into the Savuti Channel in Botswana. And of course, tusks are part of that, but these tusks are pretty small even in the early 80s throughout the 90s. But now they're even getting smaller as the big tuskers have been poached, unfortunately.
Wow.
And, you know, some of these photos are directly out of the book Wild Elephants.
It's a beautiful image. Look at the power.
Well, and those tusks. And, you know, the elephants use those tusks for digging things up, for knocking down trees, for play battles and serious fights. So, and tusks are largely big teeth. Did you know that?
Yes.
And so that particular elephant had the advantage because he had the big tusks. The second elephant had really little ones, so it was an unfair fight. So over the years, of course, behavior like this involves the tusks because they use those tusks for everything. But in more recent years, herds of elephants would show up and all the females had no tusks. And I was wondering what was going on. And this article kind of set the record straight that they're evolving away from that simply as the fact that female elephants that had tusks are being eliminated. So it's not uncommon to see a mixture of small tusks on the females and that big female on the left has nothing at this point.
Wow.
So that article was really poignant and really told me a lot of what I was experiencing, but now I've got the record straight from the Science Journal of Science.
Quick question, Art, from Linda. Did you encounter poachers?
Never. I've never seen a poacher in my life. I have encountered many anti-poachers, including the Black Mambas, which were these camouflage clad men that were up in the country of Chad, who basically almost all but stopped poaching in one of the largest, wildest parks in Africa. So they shoot to kill. I mean, there's no questions asked. If they encounter somebody in the park that's got a rifle and they can shoot them, they will shoot them. And poachers eventually get that knowledge.
A comment or / invitation from Shivang Mehta. Would be awesome to see you, Art, weaving some magic around Asiatic elephants as well.
Yeah, you know, I've got some, but I'm sure that Shivang's got better ones. But thank you for that, Shivang. Yeah,
I'm just disappointed Shivang didn't invite me. He just invited you. But
well, he has good taste, doesn't he? Anyway, here's another shot of, you know, both the smaller tusks that are, you know, evolving in the females, but also the ones that no longer have that.
Wow.
And here's a group of 4 males up in Chad, and these are big boys. These are very seasoned older males, and yet look how short their tusks are.
Hmm.
So I don't know. It's both genetic that the bigger tuskers are no longer around and they're not breeding, and so the smaller elephants that do breed give rise to smaller males and so forth and so on and it all happened within one generation in Mozambique, which is really interesting.
Hmm.
And I'll close with just a couple big tuskers. This was photographed in Tanzania in the famed Ngorongoro crater. And that's a fairly big elephant with pretty sizable tusks. And then in January, I was in Kenya, and at the foot of Kilimanjaro, there was a very big tusker that came through. And the ones of this size all have their individual names. They're known throughout the country because that one has a name that everybody recognizes. Now, don't ask me if I can remember what its name was.
What's his name, Art? What is his name?
I'll call it Paramal.
Shivang. Let's call him Shivang.
Okay. And you can see in this photo, the tusk on the right has been cut by rangers because it was just unable to walk with those tusks hitting the ground.
Wow.
Well, it's kind of like you. I've noticed that you have a hard time eating because that one super big tooth you have in the middle of your head. Well, at any rate, that was a cheap joke. So that's my contribution. As I will remind people as we evolve this Art Wolfe Live, we're looking at ways of having briefer time so that people can get onto their dinner or their football game or whatever it may be. But we'll start each Art Wolfe Live with something out of today's headlines, and then I'll get on to a video, and I'll remind people also that this is only the second video I've ever shot. And when you see me in front of the camera, Shem Compian from South Africa shot that, but otherwise 99% of it is what I struggled with and I shot. And then Kyle Jones in my office has spent the last couple of weeks, 3 weeks, finding music and putting it together to try to make sense of what I've shot. But I'm having a ball shooting with the video. And
awesome.
So I'm going to start that. Do you have any questions before we begin?
Yes, I do. Actually, a question from Linda, which I noticed too, is that does this elephant somehow have a dent in the head, or is that?
That's part of the skull. You're seeing the shape of the skull coming through. Just the skull has those dents like that.
Okay, interesting. I'll just read out a comment from Linda, and then we can move on, which is beautiful. Few of the full curls, like you'd see in the movies shown as entryways, But yeah, it's just beautiful. Just
Thank
beautiful,
you,
majestic animals.
Well, we appreciate people kind of chiming in. Once I start this video, think of questions that can be followed up as we end. It is now about 10 minutes long. So,
okay.
I randomly am shooting video as we're going along, and Kyle tries to put it into a linear story, but here we go.
Great. So you want people to ask questions as they watch the video, and I'll pick up this question.
Afterward.
Yeah.
Okay.
It took me 3 days, 3 flights, 3 countries to get where I am in Juba, South Sudan. Now in Juba, you can't photograph in the city. And so I've been shooting a little bit of video from a moving van. There's very few places I've traveled where it's forbidden to take photographs out on the street. And as I'm being driven through the very, very densely populated city of Juba, I see all these photos I want to shoot, and yet I can't. I'm traveling with my good friend, Shem Compian, and we're on a grand adventure. We're here to photograph a very traditional tribe out in the hinterlands, and we'll find out what the Mandari tribe are all about. The one thing I know is we're going to get some great shots of these giant white cows, very tall, slender, dark-skinned folks. the contrast will be brilliant. And at this time of the year, there's a lot of rain. And rain then means mosquitoes. And to combat all the mosquitoes, they build fires, which creates this beautiful atmospheric environment from which these cows, dark-skinned people, will create a beautiful painting-like atmosphere. And that's what we're after primarily. Here in the South Sudan, where there's not a lot of tourists, we're going to have the entire, probably 2,000 cows and the tribal members all to ourselves, which is great. There'll be no distractions other than the heat, the bugs, and the rain. Approaching this cattle company, but as you can see, there's no cows. Well, okay, there's a couple calves, but right now we're going to try to do some portraits while the men are kind of just sitting around talking. Later on, as all the big cows come streaming back into this camp, they're going to be distracted. So now's the time to shoot portraits. My trick here is to shoot very parallel shots. So I'm just trying to make a design out of his face because he's got V-shaped scarification on his forehead. Okay, and looking right here. Now the ash on his face is really nice because you can see the scarification. Okay, one more time. Hello. Right there. Perfect. Got it. Nice. The color of their hair and how they get the color of their hair is so unique. And then they put this ash mixed with cow dung and fire, and it makes their skin look so different, almost ghostly. So the combination of redheads, which are very unique in Africa, and how they're so compliant and allowing us to photograph these really intimate scenes, cameras in their face, is another unique thing. Great guys to work with. There's no other people here other than the Mandari, our gracious guide from Uganda, and Shem, my travel partner. And most of the day, we're hiding under trees out of the heat. We're only shooting for an hour in the morning, and as it turns out, an hour and a half at night.
As you can see, we filmed, and the cattle camp is filled up with cows here. And it really becomes intense. There's muddy underfoot, so it makes the working quite dangerous.
The challenge with white cows on a sunny day is the contrast of light and dark. On an overcast day, and there's been a lot of clouds on the horizon, it makes my job a little easier, but still, it's about finding a really tight graphic composition, and that's my challenge. We're getting what we came for. Amazing, graphic, ethereal shots in these cattle camps run by the Mandari people. Okay, you guys be quiet while I'm talking, okay? I'm in the tent right now, and torrential rains are happening outside, and it's in the middle of the day, but it's so dark, and I've had to close up the tent because everything would get soaked. So the good news is it's probably going to abate in an hour or so, and it will provide really soft light for photographing the goats, the dogs, and more importantly, the cows and the Mandari people.
You know, the care and attention that these guys give to their cattle is unparalleled. It's unbelievable. They clean the horns, they de-tick them, they rub the ash on them and wash them. You can't not photograph the care and the attention and the love, if you want to call it that these guys give to their cows.
One of the challenges of working with the Mandari is following them from camp to camp. As the cows eat the vegetation in one area, they're often moving to the next camp, and we follow them like a game of cat and mouse. We'll be following them for one more day, and then we'll head back to Juba. Hopefully you've enjoyed the second of these video diaries. We'll see you next time. So that's it. That's our little video offering. And
Wow, look at that image.
thank you. These are some of my favorites, and you saw some of my favorites embedded in the video. But as I go through these, if there's any questions you can read, I'm happy to answer them. But I love the graphic nature of these big horns, the silhouetted men. I should tell you that I misspoke. It was not a cattle company. It was a cattle camp. And they are at least 100 miles away from their villages. So they go out on these pilgrimages across the vast land, finding forage for their cows. And so mostly men are in these cattle camps. There were a couple women, but not many, and they're working. And so as I progress, there's not that many photos. Man is brushing his teeth with a stick, which is a very common tribal custom. And I just love, these guys are not posing for me. They're working and they're talking with others, and I just grab shots. But I love the way the horns and these wooden stakes that anchor the cows to the area kind of work together.
Beautiful.
So yeah, Art Wolfe, the cow photographer. But you saw, and you will see, it's really that late afternoon light and the silhouetted horns and the men working amongst them. That was what compelled me to go there. They love their cows, and they have been introduced to Catholicism but I believe that they're mostly animist. They worship animals, and in this case, the cows. So they are dusting them in the morning with a combination of ash from dung, and then they put this ochre or red clay on the horns to decorate them. And they just love these cows. And this is what they do. If they, to get that yellow hair, that beautiful hair color, they take a bath in cow urine. And so this was very common, is to see them washing with cow urine. And for some reason, maybe it's the acid in the urine, it starts to turn their hair orange, not yellow, but orange.
Wow, interesting.
But look how regal and beautiful it is. They are with the red hair, the now I've called them yellow, orange, and red hair. Let's settle on the color orange. Anyway, and then they dust their bodies with a combination of ash from the cow dung. So they are immersing themselves and the cows in dust of ash from cow dung. And I believe that keeps the flies off the cows and protects the cows from the sun, protects their bodies from the sun with that ash. But the result then is quite a striking profile, very distinct tribe custom. And then one of the first little videos I shot was putting this iPhone in the face of this guy and shooting it slow motion as he's putting dust on his face. And I just was interested in this whole process. And you can talk while he's doing this. But really, look at that.
It's very interesting. And I love the silhouettes and the heat and dust patterns in the negative space. Oh, wow. Look at this. Wow.
You're not going to find this at the Nordstrom cosmetic counter.
It's amazing.
But I think slow motion made it kind of
slow-mo makes it even more dramatic and surreal.
Yeah. And then as he puts his hands over his face, he's blowing excess ash out his nostrils.
Wow.
It's a different world out there.
It is a different world out there, for sure. This is epic.
And I love this guy. I mean, he almost looked like a Buddha, you know, with the hair color, the ash, and just his profile.
He's the Sudanese Buddha.
Yeah, there you go.
And even actually, if you go back, even the color in his eyes and the hair, you know, sort of, yeah.
Well, and in fact, their eyes, I mean, they are out there in blazing sun. I mean, it was probably 95 degrees. It's right on the equator. The relentless sun and the dust. Yeah, it's so surprising they actually have eyesight, quite honestly.
It's almost glowing.
And this guy reminded me of a Picasso mask.
Yeah, I can see that.
And again, reflective light, but that color of the hair is so distinctly Mandari. And we brought a ladder so I could get up, because otherwise you're only getting that first layer of cow or people. By being up 12 feet above everything, then I can shoot across and have the, you know, separation between the animals. And as the sun set, then it's picking up the dust that they're applying to or ash that they're applying to the cows. And it just is magical as far as I was concerned.
This is very magical light. It's beautiful. Oh, wow.
So nobody's posing for us other than the portraits. You know, they're just doing what they were doing. And I'm trying to grab this shot or that shot and, you know, work really fast.
So I got a bunch of questions. Would you like me to ask you now?
Yeah, please, please.
Okay. Question from Rick Pepin. Were you told why they did not want you to take photos in the city?
You know, it's because there's been so much turmoil in the South Sudan. Even the vice president attacked the president of that country with his own armed guards, and the whole uprising was put down. But there's marauding factions of rebels moving throughout the country. So they just forbid any kind of photographs of public buildings or even public spaces. That's the reason. And, it's just, and today I heard that the North Sudan, South Sudan was born out of the country of Sudan. The North is Islam, the South is Christian, and they had a long-standing rebellion, and finally they settled it by separating the two countries. And now the South or North Sudan has, I think, had a coup, maybe even today, or something nearly a coup. I have no idea. I didn't hear the full extent of the story, but it is a tumultuous country. And COVID was very limited because very few people are traveling to the South Sudan. So once we got out of the airport, nobody was wearing masks, and the incidence of COVID is extremely low.
Interesting.
Well, that was my final photo. So any other questions? I'm very happy.
Yeah, plenty of questions. So feel free to close if you want, so we can get you full screen. Question from Carolyn: why are some of the cows wearing tassels on their horns?
These people really do love their cows, and it's their prized possessions. So applying clay every day, they're manhandling these cows. The cows are very comfortable being touched and manipulated. They put red clay on the horns. They are putting tassels on the cows to decorate them. It's their prize and prizes, those cows. And they clearly, I don't think they eat the meat of a cow unless it probably passes. Their diet is largely yogurt and milk. So they adore their cows, and it's very obvious that they do.
Question from Startha: what do they do with the cattle? Dung for fire? What are the products from them? Anything else? What's the use?
I think the value of a man that has many cows is considered rich. If the man's daughter is to be married, the man that's marrying her has to provide more cows to the guy. And the value is the milk and probably the yogurt and other things. They may butcher them. I never saw any meat being consumed, but I was only in that village for 4 days. I had an interpreter from Uganda, so I didn't get in depth with their culture. But I did find on my way out that some of these Mandari were involved in a skirmish in January because farmers are encroaching on their normal pastoral lands. And they killed a Mandari, and the response was the Mandari killed 300 farmers.
Wow.
We didn't know that until we were leaving their village or their camp. So yeah, I mean, I couldn't take tours there. I think it was just too rough to bring anybody there. We were living in small pup tents that were dark canvas. So you saw when it was raining, I was needing a headlamp. And but I think our guy did a great job, and he brought in a cook that provided decent food. But it's just not, it's not like going on safari, it's not opulent. But it was worthwhile. I hope you agree.
Yes. If you ever get bored of Kyle or Gab, take them there and just don't come back with them. My recommendation. Okay. Question from Michael Power. With the decades of your experience working and photographing indigenous people, could you speak a little bit about how you work with people?
Well, the big secret is to be open-hearted, to smile, to show them the camera, to kind of gesture like you're asking a question. And that's typical if we're going on the street through a culture that we have no interpreter that can talk to them. Otherwise, in this particular case, the Mandari loved our interpreter guide. They really loved him. And so whatever he was presenting, which was us, the people were totally on board. But we work with interpreters most of the time because obviously our language is English, and we try to learn all the different cultures and their languages is an impossibility. So that's how we work.
Yeah. And by the way, art is very charming. So as we can all tell, so people generally accept you. Is that a fair assessment of you? I don't know you at all, really.
Yeah, no, I think charming would be the first word that would come to most people's minds.
Okay. Question from Shivang. This is a really good question. By the way, all these questions are really, really good. And I don't know if we'll have time for all questions, but we can take some next time.
Yeah.
Chaos always is fun yet challenging, be it the settlement with cows or a busy street in India or the wildebeest on the Mara River. Question, what things you keep in mind while working in chaotic environments?
Well, I pretty much go to a place, and thanks, Siobhan, for the question. I pretty much go with a visual idea on what I want to try to do. For instance, it was all about those late afternoon lights. You know, what I got beyond that was all gravy. And so whether it's the wildebeest crossing or, you know, chaos in India, it may be the chaos in India that I'm after. Here it was silhouetted cows, you know, the crossing of the Mara River by the wildebeest writes its own story, but I always have an agenda, but I'm not so dogged about it that I'm not receptive to unfolding situations.
Got it. Cool. So I just have one more question and then we could wrap it up.
Okay.
And then we'll take some questions because I know it's late as people have to go, but we'll take some of these questions next time too.
Okay.
Actually, I have two questions. One question for you. I noticed, and this is a question from me, I noticed that the Mandari tribe, they're also wearing a watch. They're quite modern in that way, and yet they're celebrating the tradition. So can you tell us a little bit about how they balance?
Yeah,
with-
you know, you see Western clothing creeping into the Mandari, but many of the men wore nothing in the morning, zero clothing, or they would have just one kind of a shawl that was over one shoulder and everything else was bare. And yet there were other people walking around with t-shirts and shorts. And I think that I was not the first photographer that went there. And I think often people will give clothes out to the people. And I find that it breaks down traditions and cultures really fast when you're handing out things like that. But they're modern people too. You know, they may be technologically behind, but they're modern human beings. And so they like watches, or if they can get their self onto a phone, there's enough coverage there that they can talk with other tribes. So, you know, it's just the evolution of culture. But for the most part, we were glimpsing into a tradition that really hasn't changed.
Cool. So one final question is to the cows. Is were you fun to hang out with? That's the question to the cows. I'll let them answer.
Okay.
Art, thank you very much. Everyone, thanks again. Great questions. And we'll try to hit some of these up again next time. And yes, Art, a lot of love for you on at least Facebook that I'm watching, probably a YouTube too that I can't watch. I can only watch one at a time. But people think you're a good photographer and a storyteller and a good fun friend that I can tell. I can agree.
All right. Thanks, Parimal. It was great talking with you. Good night, everybody.
Good night.